Some albums face long delays, and during that time, expectations get sky high, and they fail to live up to them. In this video, we look at 8 long-awaited albums that flopped. Double Duchess by Fergie. Fergie's Double Duchess was one of the most anticipated pop comebacks of the 2010s, as the long-awaited follow-up to her widely successful 2006 debut The Duchess, which spawned 5 top 5 hits and sold over 8 million copies worldwide. Expectations were high. After multiple delays and years of teasing, Double Duchess finally arrived in September 2017, more than a decade later. Unfortunately, it was underwhelming. The album debuted at number 19 on the Billboard 200, selling just 21,000 units in its first week, a huge drop compared to her debut. Critically, the album received mixed reviews, with some praising Fergie's experimentation and others calling it disjointed and outdated. The project suffered from poor promotion and a fragmented rollout. The singles, most notably MILF Money and Life Goes On, could not carry it. MILF Money peaked at number 34 on the Billboard Hot 100, but its success was largely driven by its viral music video than a sustained radio or streaming performance. Double Duchess also faced an uphill battle because of shifting pop trends. The era started way back in 2014 with the first single LA Love, which was a mustard-produced West Coast banger, and the sound changed a lot by the time it came out 3 years later. Despite Fergie's efforts to reassert herself as a solo pop force, the album disappeared from the Billboard 200 after just a few weeks, and no major tour followed. What was supposed to be a triumphant return ended up becoming a failed comeback. This Is What the Truth Feels Like by Gwen Stefani. Gwen Stefani's This Is What the Truth Feels Like, released in March 2016, was her first solo studio album in a decade, following the very successful albums Love Angel Music Baby in 2004 and The Sweet Escape in 2006. The project was released during her highly publicized divorce from Gavin Rossdale and her new relationship with Blake Shelton. Promoted as her most honest work yet, the album was highly anticipated, and it went on to debut at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling just 84,000 units in its first week, and its success was short-lived as it quickly fell down the charts and vanished within weeks. The album's lead single Used to Love You peaked at a modest number 52 on the Billboard Hot 100, and while it was heartfelt, it did not generate the kind of buzz needed to sustain success. Later singles like Make Me Like You and Misery also underperformed, despite media attention and a unique live video premiere during the Grammys. Gwen's core fan base remained loyal, but the album failed to connect with a younger audience. Unlike her earlier projects, it lacked that blockbuster hit. Though it was a personal album, This Is What the Truth Feels Like didn't have the staying power of her previous albums. It was a commercial drop-off, which made it clear that despite her legacy, her return to music wasn't that successful. Solar Power by Lorde. After the massive critical and commercial success of 2017's Melodrama, Lorde's third studio album Solar Power had a lot of anticipation. She had taken a 4-year hiatus from music, with fans and critics expecting another bold, defining album. She delivered a mellow acoustic project that deviated from her sound. The lead single Solar Power debuted modestly at number 64 on the Billboard Hot 100, and quickly dropped off, a red flag compared to Melodrama's Greenlight and Pure Heroine's Royals. Commercially, the album opened at number 5 on the Billboard 200, selling 56,000 units in its first week, respectable for the time. But a big drop from Melodrama, which debuted at number 1 with 109,000 units. Worse, Solar Power quickly lost steam, spending only 4 weeks on the Billboard 200, before falling off completely. The album received mixed reviews, and for a project that took 4 years to arrive, it lacked the chart presence, hit singles, or cultural impact that many expected it to have. Lorde herself acknowledged the lukewarm response, later admitting that the rollout wasn't what she hoped for. The album did not produce a hit song and had limited streams. She came back in a big way this year, dropping her bold new album Virgin. Radical Optimism by Dua Lipa. Coming off the global dominance of future nostalgia, an album that defined the early pandemic era, expectations were sky high for Dua Lipa's third studio album Radical Optimism. The rollout began with months of teasers, the Barbie movie soundtrack single Dance the Night, and the lead single from the album Houdini, which peaked at number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100, but didn't quite match the cultural impact of her past hits like Don't Start Now and Levitating. When it was released, Radical Optimism debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, with 83,000 units sold, much lower than many projected for a follow-up to a Grammy-winning pop juggernaut. The album's reception was polarizing. While some liked it, Many thought she could have evolved her sound better. Despite having polished production, Radical Optimism failed to deliver a breakout hit. The follow-up singles Training Season and Illusion had modest chart success, but didn't even manage to hit the top 20 of the Billboard Hot 100. The album spent far fewer weeks on the Billboard 200, with only 15 weeks spent on the chart. The streaming numbers fell short of expectations. In many ways, Radical Optimism felt like a safer move rather than a triumphant return. It was a reminder that momentum in pop music can be fragile, even for the most beloved artists. Coming Home by Usher. Usher's Coming Home, released in February 2024, arrived during a big moment for the R&B legend, following his huge Super Bowl halftime show performance and a Las Vegas residency that kept going viral. Many expected his ninth studio album to capitalize on that momentum. Instead, Coming Home debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with a modest 91,000 album equivalent units sold in its first week, which was decent for this era, but low by Usher's standards. Despite strong nostalgia from its early 2000s dominance, the album failed to connect with either older fans or a younger generation. Critically, the album was met with mixed reviews, with many calling it dated. The lead single Good Good, featuring Summer Walker and 21 Savage, had respectable buzz, but quickly stalled on the charts after peaking at number 25 on the Billboard Hot 100. No other track from the album gained significant traction on radio or streaming. The album struggled to find a foothold, and without a viral moment or significant playlist support, it faded from conversation within weeks. Despite the massive Super Bowl exposure and favorable timing, Coming Home was unable to translate cultural visibility into album success. It fell out of the Billboard 200 after just 4 weeks on the chart, showing a disconnect between his legacy and the popularity of his new music. While Usher remains a beloved figure in R&B, Coming Home showed that even icons can stumble in the TikTok era. Revival by Eminem. After a 4-year hiatus, following 2013's The Marshall Mathers LP2, Eminem returned in late 2017 with Revival, an album that had a lot of anticipation. The single Walk on Water featuring Beyonce was meant to be a smash hit, but it received mixed reviews, peaking at number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 and quickly falling down the charts. When Revival dropped in December 2017, it debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 with 267,000 album equivalent units sold, but the critical reception was brutal. Many criticized the production, the dated beats, and the overly preachy songs. It was called his worst album by many, as its sound turned them off from listening to the substance. Even stans were divided, with some praising the lyrical depth, while others hated the production. The album included collaborations with huge artists like Alicia Keys, Ed Sheeran, and Pink, designed for crossover appeal, but none of the singles stuck. River featuring Ed Sheeran was the biggest hit, peaking at number 11, but it failed to become a chart topper, which was expected from two of the biggest stars in the world. Despite being certified platinum by the RIAA, Revival was a huge disappointment. Even Eminem himself acknowledged the hate, quickly releasing Kamikaze soon after, addressing everything. Everything I Thought I Was by Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake's Everything I Thought I Was, released in March 2024, was positioned as a return to form after the polarizing Man of the Woods in 2018. With nearly 6 years between solo albums, expectations were sky high. But despite a big marketing push, including the lead single Selfish, multiple late-night show performances, and a high-profile Apple Music promotion, the album debuted with just 67,000 album equivalent units sold and landing at number 5 on the Billboard 200. It marked his lowest first-week sales. Critics were lukewarm, criticizing the lack of innovation. The 18-track project was seen as unfocused, and singles like Selfish and No Angels failed to make a dent on the Billboard Hot 100, with Selfish barely scraping number 19 before dropping off quickly, No Angels not charting at all. Even die-hard fans were confused over the album's direction. Ultimately, Everything I Thought I Was a disappointment. JT's once dominant pop presence struggled to find relevance in the new era, and some negative stories in the press didn't help either. It is one of the biggest failed comebacks of the 2020s so far. The Carter 6 by Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne's The Carter 6 released in June 2025 after a 7-year gap since The Carter 5, and 5 years after his last album Funeral. It arrived with high expectations. The Carter 5 had debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling 480,000 units in its first week, marking a triumphant return. and fans anticipated the Carter 5 would do the same, with Wayne teasing the project as early as 2018. He was on a generational feature run before the album, and his fans expected high-quality songs, and even collabs with his prodigies Drake and Nicki Minaj. However, the Carter 6 was a big disappointment. The album debuted on number 2 on the Billboard 200, with 108,000 equivalent units sold in its first week, a significant drop from every album from the Carter series. The public perception was really bad, the production was really dated, and even though the bars were still there, the beats were horrible. The Lin-Manuel Miranda produced track Penis to an Elephant was the worst, with that goofy-ass beat. The album's reliance on dated flows and a lack of a cohesive narrative left fans and critics questioning if Wayne's relevance in rap was done. While the album had occasional highlights, overall it was a disappointing entry into his legendary discography. Which long-awaited albums that flopped did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.